We are recording. Okay.
Oh, good.
Well, it's Philly Loves Bowie week, and we're celebrating here at XPN. And I am so excited to be able to have one of his collaborators on the morning show with us right now. Our guest is a multi-instrumentalist, singer, songwriter who has worked with loads of incredible musicians like Gang of Four, and Tears for Fears, just to name a few of the dozens that we could get into. But obviously, we're here to talk about one thing today. Welcome to the morning show, Gail Ann Dorsey.
Thank you. I am so honored to be on the morning show on XPN. I'm a Philly native, and I just, every all things Philly are very I'm very proud to be from the city, put it that way. It's great.
We are very
Thank you.
proud to be able to say that you're from here too, from West Philadelphia, right?
West Philly, yes.
All
Yeah,
right. And
absolutely.
then you left at relatively young age to pursue creative endeavors, right? Like you went out to
Indeed.
California to do film
Yeah,
for a little while before
absolutely.
deciding that it
Yeah,
actually was music. Yeah, no, film wasn't for
definitely
you.
not my no, I don't have the temperament or personality I think to have made it in the film business. But music was something I did since I was a child, and growing up in Philly, it couldn't have been a better city for me to grow up in as a kid who just loved music, who just from since I was like 3, 4 years old, I was like, I want a guitar, I want a guitar, I want to be able to communicate through music because it was something that was just part of my everyday life, and it just really kind of made my life special. And Philly at that time, which would have been the late 60s all through the 70s, I left in 1980, was, I mean, that music was at its peak in so many ways. And Philly an innovative city as well musically because disco kind of originated there, and a lot of the great soul music, and then there was rock, and there was the radio stations. Everything was just so it's really great.
The Philly soul sound.
Oh
Yes.
my
Oh
gosh,
my gosh. We could go
Gambling
down an
Tom,
avenue talking
Tom
about that.
Bell. Yeah,
Yes.
that's those are still big influences on my own music. It's just so great.
So when you decided to move to London in 1985, what drew you across the pond?
Well, it was really hard for me to kind of get a real career started here in the U.S. And I had an opportunity to go, and I was only like 19 or 20, and it's like I didn't own anything. I didn't have a lot of responsibilities at that point. And I just thought, why not go and see what happens over there when I take my demos over? And sure enough, it was just a more open musical environment in terms of new artists. Kind of there, and also the country had they had subsidies for musicians, which, like there was money there were government programs that allowed people to create these bands and do these different kind of workshops, and then you could get paid for it, and you'd go out and, play music. It was the first time I could make a living actually just playing music, was being in London, and then things just took off from there. It was just the right place at the right time.
Yeah, it seems like it. You released your debut album in 1988, The
That's
Corporate
right.
World,
Yeah.
and then composed music for a play as well.
Yeah, I did play. I performed in some like kind of multicultural bands, like with people from like Peru and Africa, and like it was just a variety of stuff that was going on in London, and that was the another thing that was kind of really different from like me being here when I was trying to get stuff off the ground in New York City. Sadly, I felt like the US was always very like, as a black woman, as a black musician, it's like, well, your music isn't exactly like, it's not really R&B, but we don't know what to do with it. And that was never an issue in the UK or in Europe. It was kind of like, do we like what we hear? Oh, cool. Doesn't matter whether you're from Africa or you're from, Mexico, or it didn't matter like what your ethnic sort of background was. It was like, is the song good? Is the music vibing? And so it just felt really liberating to be there. And I was like, oh wow, I don't have to, worry about those questions. I can just create what I want to create.
And connect with who you want to connect with. I still
Yeah.
feel like pigeonholing is an issue in the US, and
Yeah,
we
it's
could
okay.
go down that road. But some of the folks that you worked with when you started becoming a session musician after releasing
Hmm.
your debut album were Boy George, Donny Osmond, the Charlie Watts Big Band.
Yeah.
Tell us about the day that you met David Bowie.
Oh my goodness. Well, funny enough, I didn't meet him like officially meet him, but when I did the Charlie Watts Big Band, I was a singer in the Charlie Watts Big Band. And we had done a week of shows at Ronnie Scott's, which is a famous jazz club in London. And every famous pop star, rock star, came to see that show, from Chrissie Hynde to all the Stones to. And I remember one night Bowie showing up and being at one of the tables in the front. And years later, I said, "Did you remember that was me, little me, that was singing on that stage?" I got up to do a couple of, jazz standards. And he says yes, but I don't believe him. Maybe he did, actually. He probably did remember. But I didn't really meet him until the first day of rehearsals for the Outside tour in '95. He called me on the telephone out of the blue. I had never met the guy. I had never had any other association with him at all. And I was working, I had just finished the Tears for Fears tour for Elemental. And I was at Roland Orzabal's house in the south of England, working on songs for what some of them that turned out to be on the last album I did, I Used to Be. But I was just working on writing and thinking of doing another solo album. And the phone call comes down to Roland. I discovered where I was, and the phone call came, and I got off the phone and I said to Roland, I said, "Hey, I think we need to kind of stop our project for a minute, because Bowie's just asked me to go on tour for 6 weeks with him, opening for Nine Inch Nails." And I was a Bowie fan, but like not a fanatic. Like I didn't know so much of his work. In fact, my favorite album is Young Americans, of course, was done in Philly. And not because it was done in Philly, because actually when I was a kid, I didn't know he was there recording it until it came out. But I felt like it was the moment when I heard him sing. It was the moment when I realized this guy was probably one of the greatest male vocalists of all time. His vocal performance on that record just blew me away. And I had listened to Ziggy Stardust and all this stuff before that, and I used to play those songs in cover bands in Philly. But I didn't sort of really revere him till Young Americans, Station to Station, like further on into that period was just like phenomenal. And so I started to pay attention. But I kind of lost track of what he was doing for a while. So when he called me in 1995, I was like, I knew he'd done this Tin Machine thing. And I hadn't really followed him for a while, probably since the Let's Dance era. And then he's like, "I've done this Outside album, and we're gonna do a double bill with Nine Inch Nails, and it's just gonna be 6 weeks, and I think it's a great project." He told me all the people who were in it, who were in the band, which also freaked me out because there were a lot of the names that were on the Young Americans album, and I'm thinking, as a 14-year-old, like, I have my vinyl behind me, looking at this album cover, and I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm going to be in a band with Carlos Alomar, and Mike Garson." Like, these names I had read on these sleeves just really blew me away. So the first day of rehearsal was when I met him, and I was terrified. Probably, I think he called in May, and the rehearsals started in September, something like that, in New York City. And I was just like, I remember leaving the hotel that morning just shaking, like, "Oh my God, what am I walking into? Am I good enough? Can I hold my own?" Because being in a band with David Bowie to me was always like, there's a few artists that, if musicians who are associated with these particular artists are like the cream of the crop kind of musicians. Like if you're in Frank Zappa's band, or someone like that, that's like, just kind of innovative, and and Bowie had that, to me, had that same stigma attached. If you got to play in his band, you had something special, because it was just sort of, it was always these really interesting musicians. So I just didn't know, if I don't know why or how I got there, but he had a vision, and that vision lasted, of course, more than 6 weeks. It was nearly 20 years of working with him after that. I did every tour up until his last one, up to the reality tour from the Outside tour.
And you recorded on four of his last six albums, beginning with Earthling, which was the record
Earthling,
that came out
yeah,
after Outside, right?
that was the first
Um,
thing. Did
then
uh,
Heathen,
Heathen. I did some singing
Reality.
on that, Reality, and Toy. That album, that there was an album called Toy that came out. It didn't come out until a few years ago. It was
Mm.
something that we had done, and then they decided to release that and some extra tracks and things. So, yeah, there's a bunch of things floating around. We recorded a lot of things that actually didn't come out.
So you're saying there's more in the pipeline somewhere.
Yeah, oh, for sure,
Oh my
for sure.
gosh. So how did your relationship develop over those 20 years of working together?
He was just a great, uh, probably the greatest mentor you could ever ask for as a musician or just as a creative person. He was very encouraging, and he was like a kid. He had this constant way of seeing the world in a very creative and playful sense. So, as a musician, going into his band and learning the songs, interpreting the songs, he never wanted to be bored. So he'd be like, let's try and do something a different way. It's like like on Earthling, we end up doing a whole like different set in the tour that was like a drum and bass set because he was into that. So we did a drum and bass version of Man Who Sold the World. I mean, imagine what what that would sound like. But he gave you a, for me, he was very supportive of my solo work and of anything I did. He'd come out and see me at shows when I would play in New York City, and he was always in my corner, which was nice. And also just feeling like, um, as a musician in his band, you had the permission to be the highest of yourself, like to just go for it. There was never any sort of criticism or pickiness or whatever. It was kind of like, let's try this, let's go here. What do he gave all of us a real open space to play in like kids, and that brought him joy. And when things clicked, he would just laugh like a child. He would just be so happy, and he'd be like, woo, and just, here we are. So I don't, and I've worked with many artists, and I think I've been lucky because there's maybe been only one, and I won't mention him, and he's not American anyway, that I didn't like. But out of all the people I work for, they've all been tremendous people, very kind, very supportive, great musicians, great talent, great songs. But something with David was a little different in that sense of, it was that real freedom. He had no self-consciousness about what he was doing. And a lot of other artists they have a thing they do. They're very particular about it. That, it fits into a certain thing. And as a session player, you go in and you want to give them, the artist, what they want. You go to serve the song. It's not about your idea that, well, I could do it better, or I think it should be this. You go and serve the song. And to me, that's the joy of it. I love that challenge. I love getting someone giving me a piece of music and say, okay, now we're going to play this live and we're going to, nail it. And it's exciting. But with David, it was like this extra level of, you really had this freedom to try anything. And if it's caught his ear, he'd like, go with it. Oh yeah, we're going to go there and we're going to do this. And oh, okay. Oh, what are you doing there? And, he would know what he didn't like, but he never sort of said, do that, do that. He never kind of, he never put any kind of constraints on the creative aspect of making the music. And that's special.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like it was like going to school. It's like to me, like being an apprentice in a way to really great creative genius, like it would be Michelangelo, or something. Like if you were an apprentice to some real, well-known artist. And he was an artist. It wasn't just music. It was just learning about performing and learning about clothing and set designs and videos and all those things. His hand was in all of it, and he enjoyed it. It was like a kid, just empty out the toy box and let's grab some stuff and make it happen. And he had such a clear vision of how it should be, but he didn't kind of start from there. He would always say, you throw everything out and you take things away from it to let it reveal itself. Was a way that he worked sometimes. So you could really try things, and you didn't feel that you were sort of hindered, or there was nothing that was going to be wrong. It was just like, go for it. you
Yeah.
know. So,
Wow. You just gave me the visual of, actually, it's funny you mentioned Michelangelo, but just having like a slab of marble and chipping away at it and making something
yeah, yeah,
beautiful together. It sounds like he had a
absolutely.
really big impact on you.
Oh, huge. And just being associated with him has really, changed my life forever. As regardless of what I may or may not do musically from here on in, I will always be associated with the legacy of what he did. and that's just like sometimes it's I look back now, it's already been 10 years. I can't believe it since he passed. And I kind of have to pinch myself. I see all, because now you can see all these clips on YouTube and you're finding all these things, and I'm like, wow, did that happen? It almost seems like a dream. But it's something that it will be there forever for people to discover, and that's just like, there's it's like one person single-handedly has sort of changed the trajectory of my life in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Is this
And
a
he was a
reflective?
nice person.
Yeah. Is this a reflective week for you? Do you kind of find yourself like
Yes,
in a certain space when the
absolutely.
week comes around? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Every year since he passed, I did one of the Philly Loves Bowie weeks with Donnie McCaslin. I think it was 2019, maybe before the pandemic, at Ardmore Music Hall. I think I sang in Donnie's band. It was part of the Philly week, but kind of, so many things are going on around the world this week for Bowie, and I've been a part of this thing in New York City that's coming up this weekend at the Cutting Room, which is the sound and vision of David Bowie, and it's a bunch of alumni from different eras of his bands, and we all get together and just it's a party. It's not a tribute band. It's not it's just playing the music. Most of us have played it at some point, maybe in different years, different times, different contexts, but it's just something that is a very reflective week for all of us, and it's very emotional for all of us. And the fans come from all over the world to be a part of that, because it's really it's a real birthday party celebration for him. I wish I could. Next year, I'm going to have to try and come and do something for Philly Loves Bowie, because
We
I would
would
really like to
love
do
that.
that. I'd
Yes.
like to do that.
We say Philly loves Bowie, but I think there's the reason we say that is because Bowie loved Philly.
Yes,
And
he
I
did.
think that you might be a uniquely perfect person to talk about that.
Yeah, yeah, he did. He really loved the city. Um, he was always excited when we came to play there, and I remember, of course, he was there at the Tower Theater. I used to live 8 blocks from the Tower Theater, and was just near Upper Darby, 61st and Race, and I remember we actually ended up playing there in the 2000s or early 2000. And when I was a kid and he played in Philly, my mother said, "You can't go and see that guy. He's wearing a dress." So there was some weird thing, when he did the very famous, that first album, Live from Philadelphia. But he always had he always had a love for Philly. I'm not exactly sure what it was. I think it was the music that he liked, especially the soul music. And I
Yeah.
think that's why Young Americans kind of was born out of that sort of respect for those type of artists, and I think he could feel the vibe. Whenever we were touring and Philly was coming up, he'd get excited. There's only a few places. It'd be like Philly, London, of course, his hometown. He'd actually get a little nervous, which was rare, when he was going to play London. He'd be a little bit like, going to be hometown. So Philly kind of was a little bit like that for him. I think he had some connection to the city, and he would always get really hyped up when we were about to come and play. And we would play at different places like Electric Factory, and we did the Tower Theater, and not the big stadiums or anything like that, which was really, really fun, I think, for the fans as well.
Oh, I think the fans are going to love hearing about this. Thank you so much for
Oh, it's my
sharing
pleasure.
some of your reflections. Can I ask what your favorite Bowie song is? Is that a hard question for you to answer?
Not really. I think Space Oddity, because it's just such a beautiful, the chord progression. I like the melody of it. It's kind of it's yeah. I don't know. I love that song. I remember hearing that as a kid, like on the AM radio station sometime when my mother always had the radio on, before school. Having my breakfast. But Space Oddity has this, I don't know, this kind of eerie beauty to it. And also when I do it in the Cutting Room show, and I sing it with the Black Star Symphony as well, and I perform it sometimes in my solo shows. At the end of the night, I'll say, "Okay, let's all do a Bowie song," and people join in. But it's just the chords. It's just like, to me, like a perfectly written song, and and I like songs in that respect. Not so much the kind of weirder stuff or the experimental stuff. I like that too, but personally, I'm a song fan. I like I think you can see that picture back there. That's Helen Reddy back there on the wall. I like that kind of Helen Reddy and Olivia Newton-John is somebody who else I also got to play with, which was a dream. So I liked the sort of more pop song things, and Space Oddity kind of fits into that, but it still has that signature Bowie. When they learn the chords, like the changes and everything, like, oh my goodness, who could think of this? It's perfection, So that's one of my favorites.
No, that's a great
There's,
answer.
there's many, but that's definitely the one that comes to the top.
Well, I do want to talk a little bit more about your music before we say goodbye today, because speaking of songs, you just released your first original tune in like
For a
20
while.
years. Yeah.
Yes, it's crazy. Yeah, I'm just finishing up a little bit of writing for the rest of what will be an album. Maybe it might be an EP. We want to get it out by like late spring. So if I'm a little rushed for time, it might not be a whole album, but I've been working on this for a few years now, and there's another the first single came out in October, and I'm really excited. It had some nice reviews so far. The second single is coming out in a few weeks, actually, the end of this month. It's called Maybelline. And then we're going to be gearing up for putting out the album. And I've been doing a few solo shows lately. I did City Winery back last March, I think, City Winery in Philly, which was good, was a sellout. I was really like, I hadn't played in my hometown like that for a long time, so I was very moved. It was really nice. And so, yeah, I'm just thinking, I'm kind of getting to a point where I've played with so many people that I've really loved, and it's like I don't know where to go from here in terms of that. Of course, there are a lot of people whose music I admire, and I, love the chance, But I also think, time's getting on, and I have some things I'd like to say musically. So I've sort of really carved out this time in my life to really focus on my own music again. So, yep, I'm working on a new album. It's
I'm
going to be
eager to
called,
hear.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm
it's
eager to
called
hear more.
Spirits of Life. Yes,
I know this one. I want to play this song. It takes all kinds to make a
yes,
world.
yes. Thank
And
you.
I just want to say, come back to Philly soon. We'll sell out the show
I
again.
will. I will be there. I love Philly.
We
Yeah,
love you.
and thank you to XPN, not only to you, but to all your colleagues, and just the station itself is just tops. It's such, I learned so much. I'm always Shazamming, like, whoa, what is that song? Who is that? It's building my musical vocabulary and library, and it's just a great station. So thank you to
Oh my
XPN.
gosh. Well, thank you so much for your support and for
Yes, I'm a member.
yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you so
I'm a member.
appreciate you, Gail. And
Indeed.
the bass player, singer with David Bowie. Again, just to name one of the many, many, many accomplishments to your name. I am so grateful for your time. Thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me today.
My pleasure, Kristen. Have a happy new year. Have a healthy, safe one.
Yes, all the best to you and yours in 2026.
Cheers. See you soon.